There are mountains that have killed climbers. There are peaks so remote that reaching them requires years of planning and permits from governments that do not want you there. And then there are mountains that experienced mountaineers will not touch, not because of the altitude, not because of the weather, because something about them feels fundamentally wrong. The documentation exists, the patterns repeat. The stories come from people who do not know each other, separated by decades, describing the same sensations in the same places. Before we begin, drop a comment right now telling us where you are watching from and what time it is. We want to see how far this video travels. Among the 10 mountains on this list, the one at number 1 has a documented pattern so specific that 3 separate climbing parties abandoned their attempts at the exact same elevation, describing the exact same experience without any of them knowing about the others. Not folklore, documentation. Let's start the countdown. Number 10, Nanga Parbat, Gilgit-Baltistan, Pakistan. The name translates to Killer Mountain, and it earned that name through a body count that is impossible to ignore. At 8,126 meters, Nanga Parbat is the 9th highest mountain on Earth, but its fatality rate sits among the highest of any 8,000er. The numbers are stark. For every 4 climbers who reach the summit, 1 dies trying. The mountain has claimed more than 70 lives since the first documented attempt in 1895. The killing began early. In 1934, a German-Austrian expedition lost 9 climbers and all of their Sherpa support in a single avalanche. The bodies were found frozen in place. In 1937, another German team of 7 climbers and 9 porters disappeared completely on the Rakyat face. No distress calls, no bodies recovered for years. When searchers finally found remains in 2005, they were still wearing the expedition gear from 1937. 70 years on the mountain. What makes Nanga Parbat different is not just the deaths but the patterns. Climbers report sudden weather changes that arrive without the usual warning signs, avalanches that occur on slopes that should be stable. A specific sensation described again and again in expedition journals, the feeling of being watched from above, not by other climbers, by the mountain itself. One surviving climber from a 1970 expedition wrote in his journal that he felt the route change beneath him, as if the mountain had rearranged itself overnight. He was found wandering at base camp 3 days later with no memory of descending. The Pakistan Alpine Club keeps records. Those records show that more climbers have turned back from Nanga Parbat for reasons listed as psychological distress than on any other peak in the Karakoram. Not injury, not weather, psychological distress. The mountain has a reputation among local guides, and that reputation is simple. Nanga Parbat does not want to be climbed. It tolerates some, it kills others. And no one can predict which group you will fall into until you are already too high to turn back safely. At least Nanga Parbat gives you a choice to turn back. The next mountain does not wait for you to decide. Number 9, Kanchenjunga, border of Nepal and Sikkim, India. The 3rd highest mountain in the world at 8,586 meters and the last 8,000er to be summited. That delay was not accidental. Kanchenjunga means 5 treasures of snow, named for its 5 peaks, and the local Sikkimese people believe the mountain is the home of a protective deity. They asked climbers to respect that belief. The first successful summit in 1955 honored the request. British climber Joe Brown and his partner George Band stopped just short of the true summit out of respect for local tradition. Every expedition since has followed that same practice. You climb Kanchenjunga, but you do not stand on the top. You stop a few feet below. The mountain enforces its own rules in other ways. Kanchenjunga has the 2nd highest fatality rate of any 8,000er, 1 death for every 4 successful summits, but the deaths follow patterns that mountaineers cannot explain through weather or terrain alone. In 2013, Slovak climber Peter Hammer disappeared on the descent. His last radio transmission was calm. He reported clear conditions and said he would be at camp within an hour. He never arrived. Search teams found no trace. In 2018, experienced Indian climber Biplab Bhatia vanished in identical circumstances. Last transmission normal, weather clear, no body recovered. The stories that come from Kanchenjunga are consistent. Climbers describe hearing voices in languages they do not recognize, calling from higher on the mountain. They describe seeing figures moving on ridges above them, only to reach those ridges and find no footprints. One expedition member in 2009 filmed what he described as a person standing at the edge of a cornice at 7,800 meters. When the team reviewed the footage at base camp, the figure was still there in the frame, but no expedition had anyone at that location at that time. The figure did not move. It just stood at the edge, facing the camera. The local Lepcha people will not guide climbers above certain elevations. They say the mountain belongs to Dzuranga, the deity of Kanchenjunga. and that going higher without permission is not just disrespectful but dangerous in ways that have nothing to do with ice and altitude. Climbers who dismiss this as superstition still follow the tradition of stopping below the summit, not out of belief necessarily, but because no one wants to be the first to break the pattern and find out what happens. Kanchenjunga at least warns you with voices and figures. The next mountain gives no warnings at all. Number 8. Mount Kailash, Tibet Autonomous Region, China. This is the only mountain on this list that has never been climbed, not because it is the highest or the most technically difficult. At 6,638 meters, Kailash is within the range of peaks that experience mountaineers summit regularly. It has never been climbed because it is forbidden. Kailash is sacred to 4 religions: Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and the Bon tradition. More than 1 billion people consider this mountain the center of the universe. The Chinese government, which controls access to the region, has never issued a climbing permit and has stated it never will. But the prohibition is not just political or religious. There are accounts. In 1926, explorer and mystic Nicholas Roerich approached the mountain on an expedition and documented what his entire party experienced at close range: sudden aging. Roerich wrote that fingernails and hair grew at accelerated rates within sight of the peak. Team members reported feeling years older within days. The expedition turned back. Roerich never returned, and his journals on the subject were not published in full until after his death. In 2001, reports emerged that a Spanish team had received unofficial permission to attempt Kailash. The Chinese government denied the reports immediately and reaffirmed the ban. But climbers in the region at the time claimed they saw the Spanish team establish base camp. Days later, the team was gone. No summit, no official statement. One member allegedly told a journalist years later that they got within 300 meters of the summit before the entire team simultaneously refused to go higher. He said it was not a decision they discussed. It was a reflex, like stepping back from the edge of a cliff. They packed and left the same day. Pilgrims who circumambulate Kailash, a ritual trek that takes days, report phenomena that repeat across centuries: time distortion, a sense of being observed, the specific and recurring experience of seeing their own reflections in the ice moving independently. These are not stories from one era or one faith. They are consistent across Hindu sadhus, Buddhist monks, and Western trekkers who come with no religious context at all. The mountain is not just unclimbed. It is considered unclimbable, not by nature but by something older than any climbing tradition. Kailash does not kill climbers because no one has ever been allowed to try. The next mountain kills them after they succeed. Number 7. Gangkhar Puensum, border of Bhutan and China. The highest unclimbed mountain in the world at 7,570 meters, not the highest mountain that no one has ever summited, and it will remain that way. In 2003, Bhutan banned all mountaineering on peaks above 6,000 meters out of respect for spiritual beliefs. Gangkhar Puensum, whose name means White Peak of the Three Spiritual Brothers, was closed to climbers before anyone could reach the top. 4 expeditions tried before the ban. All 4 failed, not at the summit, lower, much lower. The 1985 British expedition got the closest, reaching what they believed was a subsidiary peak before weather forced them down. But here is the problem: no one knows for certain which peak they reached. The mountain straddles a border that China and Bhutan have never formally agreed upon. Maps of the region do not match. GPS readings taken by the 1999 Japanese expedition did not correspond to any previously recorded data. The climbers brought the discrepancy to cartographers who had no explanation. The mountain, according to their instruments, had moved. The Japanese team also reported something else. At 6,800 meters, all 4 climbers experienced identical auditory hallucinations. They heard a low vibration like a horn or a bell coming from inside the mountain. It was not wind. Wind creates high-pitched sounds in thin air. This was a resonance they felt in their chests. The sound continued for 3 hours and then stopped. They descended the next day. The lead climber later said in an interview that the sound was not what made them turn back. It was the silence after the sound stopped. He said the mountain felt like it was holding its breath. Bhutanese authorities have made it clear the ban will not be lifted. The mountain is home to protective spirits, and disturbing them is not a risk the country will take. No one has set foot on Gangkhar Puensum since 2003. No one will. The peak remains untouched, unmapped with full certainty, and according to those who got close, aware of every attempt. At least Gangkhar Puensum stays in one place on most maps. The next mountain does not stay anywhere. Number 6. Machapuchhar, Gandaki Province, Nepal. The name means fishtail, named for the twin peaks that resemble the tail of a fish. At 6,993 meters, Machapuchhar is not an 8,000er, but it dominates the skyline of the Annapurna Range and is considered one of the most beautiful mountains on Earth. It is also forbidden. The Nepalese government has banned all climbing since 1964, declaring the mountain sacred to the god Shiva. Only one team ever received permission to attempt the summit, and what happened on that climb is why no one has been allowed back. 1957, a British expedition led by Jimmy Roberts received permission under the condition that they not stand on the summit itself, similar to the tradition on Kanchenjunga. The team agreed. They reached within 150 feet of the top and then stopped, honoring the agreement. But the descent went wrong, all of it. The weather collapsed without warning. Routes they had climbed safely days earlier were suddenly unstable. One climber fell and was barely caught. Another reported that his ice axe was ripped from his hands by a gust of wind on a slope that should have been sheltered. The team made it down, but Jimmy Roberts wrote in his expedition account that the mountain had tolerated their presence until they got too close, and then it had actively tried to remove them. If you subscribe right now, you will not miss the second half of this list. Turn on notifications. The mountains ahead are worse. We still have 5 more peaks to cover. A mountain where climbers vanish on clear days, a summit that appears on some maps and not on others, and at number 1, a peak with a documented pattern so specific that it has ended careers. Let's continue. Roberts recommended that Machu Picchu never be climbed again. The Nepalese government listened. No permits have been issued since. The mountain remains one of the few major Himalayan peaks with no summiting attempts in over 60 years. But trekkers on the Annapurna circuit, which passes within clear view of Machu Picchu, report something unusual. Photographs of the mountain often fail to develop correctly. Digital photos show light anomalies that do not appear on any other peak in the range. The anomalies are always in the same place, near the summit. Guides in the Pokhara region will not look directly at the peak for extended periods. When asked why, the answer is always some variation of the same thing. Looking too long makes you want to climb it, and wanting to climb it is dangerous even from a distance. 3 trekkers have disappeared from the Annapurna circuit in the last 15 years. All 3 were last seen sitting alone facing Machu Picchu. None of them were climbers. They were not equipped. They were not planning ascents. They just walked toward the mountain and did not come back. Machu Picchu does not need to be climbed to be dangerous. Proximity is enough. The next mountain does not even need you to get close. Number 5, Mount Nyiragongo, Democratic Republic of the Congo. This is not a snow peak. Nyiragongo is an active stratovolcano with a lava lake at its summit that has been erupting almost continuously since the mountain was first documented by European explorers in 1894. The lava lake is one of the largest in the world, and the lava itself is unique. It is unusually fluid, which means when the crater wall fails, the lava moves faster than any other recorded flow. In 1977, the crater wall collapsed. The lava reached speeds of 60 miles per hour. Entire villages were buried in minutes. The death toll has never been confirmed, but estimates range from 600 to 2,000 people. Climbers do summit Nyiragongo. It is not a technical climb. You can hike to the rim in 6 hours, but people who spend the night at the summit shelters report experiences that have nothing to do with volcanic activity. Voices that seem to come from the lava lake itself, not screams, words, specific phrases repeated in Swahili, French, and languages no one in the party speaks. One British volcanologist who has summited Nyiragongo 12 times refuses to sleep at the crater rim anymore. In a 2015 interview, he said that on his 8th trip, he heard his own name called from the lake. He was alone in the shelter. He has not stayed overnight since. The lava lake glows bright enough to illuminate the crater walls at night, and that glow creates shadows that should not move. Guides who lead tourist groups to the rim have documented this on video. Shadows cast by the lava's light sometimes move independently of the people casting them. In one video uploaded in 2018, a shadow on the crater wall raises its arm. The person casting the shadow is standing still. The video was analyzed by effects experts who found no evidence of tampering. Local communities do not go near Nyiragongo unless they have no choice. The mountain erupted again in 2002, killing 250 people and displacing thousands. It will erupt again. Volcanologists know this. The lava lake is active. The pressure is building, but even scientists who study the volcano admit there is something about Nyiragongo that does not fit models. The eruptions do not follow predictable patterns. Seismic data suggests activity that stops and starts as if the mountain is choosing when to release pressure. One researcher described it as the mountain breathing. Nyiragongo is alive in ways that have nothing to do with magma. At least Nyiragongo stays visible. The next mountain does not always appear. Number 4, Kanchenjunga West Face, Nepal. This is not a separate mountain. This is a specific face of Kanchenjunga, the same peak from number 9, but this side of the mountain has its own history and its own body count. The west face was not successfully climbed until 1997, decades after the main summit had been reached multiple times. The reason for the delay is simple: climbers kept dying in the same place. Between 1975 and 1991, 5 separate expeditions attempted the west face. All 5 lost climbers, not at the top, at a narrow section around 7,400 meters that climbers started calling the Gone Zone. The name comes from what happens there: people vanish. In 1991, a French climber named Marc Bitard was ascending with his partner when he stopped to adjust his crampons. When he looked up, his partner was gone. No fall, no shout. No trace. Bitard descended alone and never climbed again. The 1997 team that finally succeeded did so by climbing at night through the Gone Zone. They did not plan it that way. Weather forced them to move faster than expected, and they ended up passing through the section in darkness. All 4 members summited and descended safely. When asked later why they thought the night climb made a difference, the lead climber said that whatever was in the Gone Zone could not see them in the dark. He was not joking. Subsequent expeditions have avoided the west face entirely, even though it is now a proven route. The Gone Zone has a documented pattern. Climbers who enter it alone or in pairs do not come out. Climbers who move through it quickly without stopping have a higher survival rate, but the pattern is not perfect. In 2009, a team of 4 climbers moved through the section together, roped, in under 2 hours. One of them still disappeared. The rope was cut cleanly, as if with a blade. No one was carrying a blade. The Nepalese government does not restrict access to the west face, but guide companies will not take clients there. Insurance companies will not cover expeditions on that route. The mountain has other faces. Climbers use them. The west face remains technically open but functionally abandoned. The Gone Zone is still there, waiting at 7,400 meters, and no one knows what it is waiting for. The west face at least lets some climbers through. The next mountain has let almost no one survive. Number 3, Annapurna I Gandaki Province, Nepal. The 10th highest mountain in the world at 8,091 meters and the deadliest 8,000er ever documented. The statistics are brutal. For every 3 climbers who reach the summit of Annapurna, 1 dies on the mountain. That is a 33% fatality rate. No other major peak comes close. Annapurna was the first 8,000er ever summited in 1950 by Maurice Herzog and Louis Lachenal. Both men survived, but Herzog lost all his fingers and toes to frostbite. Lachenal lost all his toes. Herzog later said that if he had known what the mountain would take from him, he would not have climbed it. The death toll continued. In 2014, a massive avalanche killed 43 people on the mountain in a single day, the deadliest disaster in Annapurna's history. But the avalanche is not what makes Annapurna cursed, it is the other deaths, the ones that happen on clear days, the climbers who fall on flat sections, the ropes that snap under loads they are rated to hold. Annapurna kills climbers in ways that should not be possible. In 2016, Swiss climber Uli Steck, one of the most experienced alpinists alive, fell to his death on Annapurna during what was supposed to be an acclimatization climb. Steck had summited Everest. He had soloed the Eiger, he knew mountains. He fell on a route he had climbed before in good weather with no apparent cause. His body was recovered, but the fall itself remains unexplained. Experienced climbers do not fall like that, except on Annapurna they do. The mountain has a presence that climbers describe in identical terms. Heaviness, not physical heaviness, a weight in the air that increases the higher you go. One climber said it felt like the mountain was leaning on him. Another said she felt like she was being pushed down. Both climbers were on different expeditions years apart and neither knew of the other's account. The Annapurna range is sacred ground in Hinduism, home to the goddess Annapurna, the deity of nourishment. Climbers have started leaving offerings at base camp, even climbers who do not believe in the goddess. It is not faith, it is fear dressed as respect. Annapurna does not forgive mistakes and it does not always wait for you to make one. At least Annapurna kills quickly, the next mountain takes its time. Number 2, K2, border of Pakistan and China. The second highest mountain on Earth at 8,611 meters and the mountain with the second highest fatality rate of any peak over 8,000 meters, 1 death for every 4 summits. But K2 is different from every other mountain on this list because of when it kills. Climbers call it the Savage Mountain and the name is earned. K2 does not kill on the way up, it kills on the way down. 80% of deaths on K2 occur during descent. You can reach the summit, you can stand on top of the second highest point on the planet, and then the mountain takes you on the way home. The 2008 disaster is the worst single event in K2 history. 11 climbers from different expeditions died over the course of 2 days, most of them after summiting. An ice serac collapsed and severed fixed ropes. Climbers were stranded, some fell, some froze, some simply sat down and did not get up. Survivor accounts describe a moment when the mountain stopped being neutral. One climber said the descent felt like the mountain had shifted its attention to them. Another said it felt like being hunted. K2 has no easy route, every approach is technical. The weather is more violent than Everest and the altitude gives you less time to react when things go wrong. But experienced climbers say it is not the difficulty that makes K2 cursed, it is the timing. The mountain lets you succeed and then it punishes you for succeeding. In 1986, 5 climbers summited K2 in a single day. All 5 died on the descent. In 1995, 6 climbers summited. 4 died within hours. The pattern repeats. Pakistani porters who work on K2 have their own name for the descent. They call it the turn. They say that when you turn your back on the summit to descend, the mountain wakes up. It is not a metaphor to them, it is procedure. Some porters will not descend facing forward. They walk backward for sections of the route, refusing to turn their backs fully to the peak. Western climbers used to dismiss this as superstition, until enough of them died that some started doing the same thing. The most disturbing accounts come from solo climbers. K2 has been soloed only a handful of times, and every solo climber who survived has reported the same experience on the descent. The feeling of being followed, not by another climber, by something staying just out of sight. One solo climber said he heard footsteps behind him for 4 hours on the descent. He was alone on the mountain. He recorded audio. The footsteps are on the recording. K2 does not just kill. It follows you down, and if you are not fast enough, it catches you. At least K2 has a clear summit. The mountain at number 1 does not let you reach it even when you are standing on it. Number 1, Mount Roraima, border of Venezuela, Brazil, and Guyana. This is not a snow peak. This is not an 8,000er. Mount Roraima is a flat-topped mountain at Tepuy, rising 2,810 meters above sea level. You can hike to the summit. No technical climbing required. Thousands of tourists do it every year. It is one of the oldest geological formations on Earth, over 2 billion years old, and it looks like a massive table carved from stone and set in the clouds. It is beautiful, it is accessible, and climbers who go there alone do not come back the same. The summit plateau covers 31 square kilometers of exposed rock, scattered boulders, and shallow pools of water. Mist covers the plateau almost constantly. Visibility drops to a few meters. That is when it starts. Climbers report losing time on Roraima, not minutes, hours. In 2011, a Venezuelan guided group of 6 tourists reached the summit at 9 a.m. They explored for what they estimated was 2 hours. When they descended, it was 6 p.m. 9 hours had passed. No one in the group could account for the missing time. Watches confirmed it. All 6 watches showed the same time. The phenomenon repeats. In 2003, a Brazilian hiker summited alone and planned to camp overnight on the plateau. He set up his tent, ate dinner, and went to sleep. When he woke, his tent was in a different location, not moved by wind. The tent was staked. It was 50 meters from where he had pitched it, facing a different direction. His gear was inside, untouched. He descended immediately and never returned. The indigenous Pemon people who have lived in the region for thousands of years do not go to the summit. They say Roraima is the home of spirits who do not welcome visitors. The stories are specific. They say that if you take anything from the summit, a stone or a piece of plants, the mountain will follow you until you return it. This is not folklore. Tour guides in the region have documented it. Tourists who take rocks from Roraima as souvenirs report the same experience. Nightmares. Objects moving in their homes, a pervasive feeling of being watched. The phenomenon stops when they mail the rocks back. One German tourist took a stone in 2008. She reported that every night for 2 weeks she dreamed of the plateau. Same dream. She was standing on Roraima surrounded by mist and something was walking toward her. She never saw what it was. She woke up before it reached her. On the 15th night she did not wake up before it reached her. She saw it. She will not describe what it was. She mailed the stone back the next day. Park rangers stationed near Roraima will not stay on the plateau after dark. They say the mountain changes at night. The mist gets thicker. The pools of water reflect things that are not there. In 2017, a ranger reported seeing lights moving across the plateau far from any campsites. He investigated and found no source. The lights were not headlamps, they were not fires, they moved in patterns forming shapes he could not identify. He requested a transfer the following week. The most disturbing pattern is the repetition. Climbers who summit Roraima alone report meeting other climbers on the plateau who do not speak and do not respond to questions. The figures are always dressed in outdated clothing. In 2015, a solo British hiker photographed a man on the summit wearing what appeared to be 1970s climbing gear. The man did not acknowledge him. When the hiker reviewed the photo later, the figure was gone from the frame. The hiker uploaded the original file to a forensics team. The metadata was intact. The photo had not been edited. The figure had been there when the shutter clicked. It was not there in the file. Roraima does not kill climbers. It does something worse. It keeps them, not their bodies, something else. Guides who have summited Roraima dozens of times say the plateau feels more crowded every year even though fewer people are climbing it. They say you can feel it in the mist. The sense that you are not alone, that you are never alone up there, and that the presences on the plateau have been waiting longer than any human memory. Roraima is the oldest mountain on this list. And it has had 2 billion years to learn what it wants from the people who come to stand on top of it. 10 mountains, 6 countries, 1 pattern. Some places do not just resist being climbed, they resist being known. The altitude will kill you, the weather will kill you. But these mountains do not need altitude or weather. They have something older, something that does not care about your experience or your equipment or your intentions. Which mountain felt the most cursed to you? Drop your answer in the comments. The next video goes somewhere even the researchers would not stay overnight. You will not want to miss it.